Today we'll be discussing 11 categories for assessing clients. So these are the 11 areas you want to make sure that you address when performing an interview assessment with clients. So you'll want to start by explaining the purpose of the assessment. You want to give them the rationale for conducting the assessment interview. So you want to make sure they understand the types of questions they'll be asked, how the information that is gained from the assessment will be used. You want to set expectations. So you may want to tell them, maybe some of the areas you'll be asking about, how much time it may take to perform the assessment, and if you haven't already, you want to obtain informed consent. Next, you want to identify the range of concerns. So here you're helping the client identify all major issues and concerns, because clients may come in and present with one issue, but unless you conduct a thorough interview, you may not realize that there are other issues there that also need to be addressed. So you certainly don't want to be well into therapy and then find out of a new issue you didn't realize the client had, or even worse, you don't want to include therapy and then realize that there are some issues that have not been addressed at all. Then you want to prioritize and select issues. It is going to be too overwhelming to tackle many issues at once. So you have to choose which issue you will start to address first in therapy. So this may be the problem that brought them to therapy. It could be the issue that's causing the most distress. It can be something that has the best chance of being resolved. And this can be good because it can start off your client with success. They address something that can be easily dealt with. And you can also start with the issue that must be resolved before others can be addressed. So, for example, if you have a client that has a substance use issue, you're not going to be able to address past traumas or depression or anxiety if they're under the influence or they're self-medicating with their substance. So you want to address that and then deal with the underlying trauma that may be contributing to the substance use. You'll want to understand the present behaviors, because most often clients come to therapy with vague concerns. They may say, I'm feeling depressed. Okay, well, what does that mean? That's very vague. You want to identify things like their thoughts. So what are you thinking to yourself? Well, I'm thinking that I'm useless and I'll never be happy, and that this feeling will never go away. Well, what are your beliefs surrounding this? Well, I believe that I'm not worthy of love, and I deserve everything that is happening to me. We'll ask about the behavior. So what does it look like when you're feeling depressed? They may say, I cry every day. I stay in bed and watch TV. I don't put on clothes. I avoid calls from friends and family members. So you want to make sure that you understand what their behavior actually looks like. Next, you'll want to identify the antecedents. So you want to figure out what happens before the problematic behavior occurs that could be contributing to that behavior. And so there are lots of different categories of antecedents. The antecedent might be affective, meaning it might be some emotion that triggers the behavior. So the behavior is overeating. When I feel depressed, I overeat. When I feel lonely, I overeat. It could be somatic, so it could be a physical feeling. When I have a headache, I overeat. When I'm tired, I overeat. It could be a behavior. So one behavior can be an antecedent for another behavior. So it could be when I drink alcohol, I tend to overeat. So one behavior is leading to another. They can also be cognitive. So when I have this thought, when I'm thinking about my deceased friend, I engage in this behavior. It can be contextual. It could be when I'm in this particular location, I overeat, or it can be relational. When I have a fight with my boyfriend, or when my boss has been rude to me. So you want to figure out what is happening before the behavior that could be contributing to and triggering the behavior. Then you want to look at the consequences of behavior. What happens after the problem behavior that can serve to maintain the behavior, strengthen it, or weaken it? And these consequences can also be internal or external. So an example of an internal consequence would be when I overeat, I feel guilty or I feel a sense of shame. External could be my partner becomes upset at me. So it can come from within or can come from outside of the client. Then you want to look at secondary gains. So secondary gains are a type of consequence, but secondary gains are the benefits of having the problem. So often clients come into therapy and they say, I have this issue, I want to be done with it, I want to be rid of it, but they don't realize that there is some um, consequence of that behavior that is contributing to the problem. It's a benefit of having the problem. So this could be, your client could say that they're depressed, and you say, well, what are the benefits of being depressed? What are some good things that happen to you as a result of being depressed? And they may say, um, when I'm depressed, I'm able to stay home and I don't have to go out and socialize with people. If I tell them I'm feeling depressed, then they don't push me when it's time to go out for a social function, and I enjoy, being able to stay home where I feel safe and not having to go out and socialize. So a benefit of being depressed is that I can avoid interactions with other people. Another example of secondary gains that always comes to mind is, I watched the show My 600-Pound Life, and I'm always struck by the number of these, super morbidly obese people who have a history of sexual trauma. And often they're able to even articulate themselves that, when I am this big, people stay away from me. I don't worry about being, a victim of sexual assault again. This way keeps people away from me. So that could be one of the secondary gains of being very, very overweight, is you feel safer and you're able to feel like you're protecting yourself against sexual assault because that's something that's happened to you in your past. So, sometimes clients will not be working toward resolving an issue, and it can be related to these secondary gains. So there's actually something that they're benefiting from as a result of having this problem. And then you want to make sure that you explore previous solutions. So this prevents you from suggesting something that's already been attempted, and whatever was attempted could have been ineffective, but it also could have been something that made the problem worse. So you definitely want to make sure that you explore all previous solutions to make sure that you're not recommending something that either won't help the client or could potentially harm the client. You'll want to identify coping skills, strengths, and resources. So you want to look for, protective factors. What has been helping the client? And if it has been helping the client in one arena, maybe you can apply it toward the problem that they're currently experiencing. So what has helped them in the past, what is helping them now? Like, how have they been able to function as well as they have? What has been helping them? Are there any behavioral assets? Do they have some good habits, some positive behaviors that can help them? How are they at solving problems? If they have solved problems in other areas of their life, maybe you can apply those same problem solving skills to their current issue. How they cope with other things, how they cope with the problems so far. Maybe they have some beneficial coping strategies. And what is their social support system like? You want to, assess their social supports, and then if they're lacking, help them build a social support network. You'll want to explore the client's perception of the concern, and we call this the patient position. So it's very likely that your client has some idea about what they think has contributed to the problem or is maintaining the problem. So you want to get your clients the way they conceptualize the problem, the way they've made sense of it. And so as the client is giving you their position, you want to know which aspects are stressed and which are ignored. What parts of the problem do they stress in their explanation, or what is ignored? Are they, attributing issues to one thing and ignoring the contribution of other things to the problem? So you really want to look at how your client describes the problem and what they emphasize and what they de-emphasize. You'll want to ascertain the intensity of the concern. So how much is the issue affecting the client and their functioning? So you may ask your client something like, on a daily basis, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much of an issue is your depression causing you? 1 being no problem at all, I'm able to function most days. 10 being I'm so depressed that I can't function, I can't leave my bed. So on average, um, what is the intensity of your depression level on an average day? So you want to determine how much of an issue the behavior problem is causing to the client. So some limitations to addressing these 11 areas in your interview assessment. It should not be an interrogation. You want to make sure that regardless of what you're doing in terms of therapy, you're always focused on maintaining that relationship. So you want to employ your active listening responses. You want to make sure that you're conveying empathy, that you're engaged with the client, even though you're collecting information. You don't want them to feel like it's robotic, it's question after question after question, and they're not really being listened to. And it's not just about collecting information. You know, at the end of your assessment, you'll have all of these disconnected pieces of information, and it's up to you to use your clinical skills to integrate and synthesize. Remember, you're trying to get a clear picture of the client issues, so you don't want to look at bits of information in isolation. You want to synthesize everything you've collected during your interview assessment. And it must be done in an understanding and empathic way. You know, some of these questions you ask your client may bring up, painful emotions or painful memories. So you want to make sure again that you're conveying that empathy throughout as you're performing your assessment.